Hello YouTube, I come before you to ask for your help. Twitch chat have been awfully rambunctious this morning. This is pretty much the 6th time I've attempted to record this video, and every time I've attempted to start, I end up getting interrupted. So if you want to help set a better standard for how my Twitch chat can not ruin the experience of trying to enjoy content together, please dial twitch.tv/Makari and join the community today so you can raise that bar and the standard that we expect from our audience. Thank you. This has been a Kari message of the day. So without any further ado, let's see what WesHammer has to say about female Chaos Sisters of Battle. Which in my mind would make sense, considering Chaos is the opposite of the Emperor. So whatever there is of mankind, Chaos has a variant of it.
Have got to be at the top of the list. I mean, yeah, nuns with guns are cool and all, but what about
the dummy
nuns
mummies of
with
the
guns
internet
with spikes? However, there's just one teeny tiny
I like his shirt,
problem,
though.
and that's that everybody knows.
Oh yeah, there's that show coming out. Yeah, the one with the really oddly animated Necrons.
Corruption. And this is due to their unwavering faith in the God Emperor.
That's not even Warhammer. That's just some fantasy nun that some gooner made for the sake of their own gratification.
Corruption. It's actually the primary factor that plays into the complicated relationship.
Thank you for that sub, by the way. Appreciate it.
Because on one
Enjoy your
hand,
emotes.
their brothers in arms over in the Astartes chapters are
So that's always the thing, right? Chaos is always the antithesis of the Emperor Mankind. So if they're sisters of battle, they're obviously meant to be female variants. But realistically, I suppose female chaos warriors and just end up being either Slaanesh or sort of like those sort of weird demony succubus things, because apparently GW have no creativity. Also, lovely pause frame.
The sisters eye them with a healthy amount of suspicion and mistrust.
You would expect that though,
What
right?
if I was to tell you that this was all a lie, that there was evidence to suggest that not only had a sister willingly sided with Chaos in the past, but that it hadn't been a one-off occurrence? What if it had happened hundreds, if not thousands of times before, and the ecclesia...
I mean, it would make sense. It's just GW are like the rest of the internet, and they're afraid of women.
Chaos Sisters is not the grand heretical conspiracy...
Wait a minute. Why am I in this picture? Hey, they isn't paying me royalties! This is bullshit! This is bullshit!
The ecclesiarchy would have
Also, yes, GW are just notorious for not being able to write shit at the moment.
But if that's true, then who were these women that spat upon their oaths to the God Emperor and embraced?
It weirds me out because we know that they would exist.
For their betrayal?
So why haven't we seen them? Also, this is the only time I'm going to mention the female custodes thing. There is evidence that a female custodes did exist in the lore of Warhammer. There was a book that came out in the mid-2010s that had the mention of a female custodian that did exist. So, before all you high and mighty women in my fantasy, check your facts. Just saying. I mean, yes, it's still controversial as shit, but still.
We could see a full-fledged Chaos Sisters of Battle army come to the 40k tabletop game. And more importantly, could they become a major player in future events?
I would love that, actually.
Well, in this video, we're going to get into
I know we get some kind of sex appeal with the Slaanesh in Warhammer, but I'd love to see like actual female Chaos Sisters of Battle.
Honest with you, I forgot to film a transition here, and I'm on vacation. So here's an ad.
It's time to say goodbye to your bad habits.
Unfortunately, you are not Russian Badger, so I will not watch your ad.
To the men and women living within the Imperium, the Sisters of Battle exist both as a shining beacon of the God Emperor's radiance and a physical manifestation of the protection he grants those that would follow in his light. Now, although the truth of the Imperium...
If the Sisters of Battle weren't such devout dickheads, I would actually quite like them, but they are... You guys think the Black Templar are xenophiles and generally filled with hatred? These guys make the Black Templar look like saints.
If there's one thing these people know to be true, it's that the Sisters are incorruptible. In the 6,000 years that have passed since their order's founding during the Age of Apostasy, not a single one of them has ever
I will say
broken
though,
their vows
the Sisters
or
of Battle
betrayed
has some of the
mankind.
best looking
This is what they
armor
are
and
taught. This is what the
tech
sisters
out of
themselves
all of the
believe,
Empire,
and it's
Imperium
what the
even.
Imperial records dating back thousands of years all indicate to be true. However, when we begin to dive into the deeper lore and peel back the layers of secrecy that surround this ancient and holy order, we end up discovering the telltale signs of a massive conspiracy, one that suggests their incorruptibility is nothing more than another one of the Imperium's.
So you're telling me that at some point in the history of the Warhammer 40k universe, somebody said, well, you know, we've made it into all of our military, well, not including the Imperial Guard. I mean, friggin' women in the Imperial Guard is the thing. But, you know, Space Marines, they were like, so we have legion after legion of male Space Marines who are just there doing their thing. But we have an entire genome of super soldier potential. Why don't we capitalize on that? Not only making a specialized faction of pseudo Space Marines, but also ones that kind of make us look a bit sexy, that can win some of those juicy votes for us. I mean, let's not pretend that the Sisters of Battle were really made for any other reason than adding a bit of sex appeal to the Warhammer roster. Because, you know, the Sisters of Battle kind of came into the model world at a time when GW were really kicking off in the public eye, and they realized that there was a really, really misaligned allotment of the genders of people playing. So what better way to get the female genome into the game than making relatable characters? Like, well, I don't really feel like playing orcs. They're kind of brutish and look like my boyfriend. Or I don't want to play Imperial Guard because they're just humans. I don't want to play Eldar because the Eldar. But what if female Space Marines, and I know they're not, but to anyone getting into the board game, they're gonna like, ooh, Space Marines, but women, I woman, relatability.
Many lies. That Chaos Sisters of Battle are indeed real, and there may just be a whole lot more of them than many people originally thought. But how is this
Well, if there's
possible?
something human,
How
there
does
is a
group that
corruptible
through
version of
faith
it, no
is
duh.
perhaps closer to the Emperor than any other organization in existence capable of harboring heretics? If it's true that this quote-unquote incorruptible faction has seen thousands of its sisters defect to the ruinous
This
powers,
art's pretty good,
how is
actually.
This information
I do have to ask though, why are you letting the demon lick you like that? Why is there just a picture of me getting cozy with some other VTuber out there?
not known to the wider Imperium, including factions like the Inquisition?
Oh yes, of course.
If these rumors are to be believed, then how does a sister become corrupted? Well, in order to get to the bottom of this,
I
I've
would
spent
actually
the
like to
last
just
week
generally know
scouring
more
through
about
the
the
source
Sisters of
material for
Battle.
references to corrupted sisters. And when I say corrupted, I mean individuals that willingly chose to spit upon their oath to the God Emperor, abandon their sisterhood, and walk a far darker path all of their own accord. So I'm going to be ignoring instances where a sister was momentarily corrupted via demonic possession, mind control, or some other means.
A typical
But they
Chaos
all
Day.
managed to snap out of it, as such things are not exactly uncommon within the grimdark future. I'll freely—
I mean, there's the thing of it, right? So just because you don't see it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. Like, the Warhammer world is vastly bigger than just the books that you've seen. Like, there's a lot of like unwritten stuff that could potentially happen. But I think the problem is that we expect too much of GW. Like, you can only suggest and guess at what could have happened if GW haven't officially made it canon. And knowing GW, these questions that people are really asking will never get answered because they're too busy worrying about gender equality in their game of fantasy.
admit that I was surprised to see just how rare Chaos Sisters
Yes, let's
actually
put
were, but I
our
did
real
manage to
world
uncover
politics
3 fallen
into a
sisters whose
fantasy
stories
game.
were absolutely
Because we love
crazy.
that. We
We're
love
gonna be
that.
getting into that in the second half of this
Dude,
video.
I say
but
this about all games. I play games for the escapism. That escapism is ruined the second real world politics are brought into my fantasy world. I don't mind. I love representation. I love equality. I love all of that. But it shouldn't be the driving point of something. You shouldn't be changing something just because you want to make a specific demographic happy. And again, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but that's the whole driving notion behind why people are upset. And I get it. I do. It's just there's a bigger picture here than just, ooh, we need some titties in our franchise.
First, I think it's important for us to understand how a sister could become corrupted in the first place by examining what corruption is and how it works, as well as how somebody could actually be immune to it, as many claim the sisters.
Because corruption is a very interesting concept in the Warhammer universe.
To understand that chaos is not simply a force of destruction, but also a manipulative, metaphysical, psychic sentience.
I would like to use the term subversion as opposed to manipulation.
Spirit. Fear, anger, ambition, despair.
It takes all the darker parts of the human and brings them to the surface.
Who can then use
untethers them from their mortal coils, if you will.
To stray from the path of the righteous. And chaos does not come empty-handed. Oh no, it comes bearing gifts beyond anything one could.
Although this isn't the discussion about should there be females in the Warhammer universe.
Want power.
This is about the sisters and whether they can be corrupted.
Or maybe something far more personal.
Oh shit, that's cool.
Our pain and suffering, offer us a chance at perceived redemption or revenge against a hated enemy. Sometimes chaos offers us something more intangible, a lie, an idea,
a tier 3 sub,
a rumor, or as is often the case, an inconvenient truth. A glimpse into the nature of reality, or a peek behind the curtains at the insidious core of the orders.
Yeah, exactly. It brings out what you wouldn't otherwise show.
Chaos simply needs to hold up the mirror to humanity and ask them to question
it's the darkest version of yourself.
It whispers to its prey
that which you subjugate, that which you hide.
To allow in the sin of doubt. Although there are many prominent figures of legend whose
God, I love this kind of hood.
Serves only to exist as a
now that's my kind of religion right there.
Chaos is truly capable of. In the vast majority of cases, corruption on the individual level is rarely marked by some grand heresy. More often, it is far.
So where did he get all this art from? Some of this is gorgeous. Oh wow! I remember this picture. A friend of mine showed it to me when he was because this was the first time I ever played against a Sisters of Battle army. He had a book filled with artwork, and this was one of them. And you can tell this is an older picture because the bolt guns look like bricks.
Doubt. The briefest of
like the old bolt gun design is kind of kooky.
The tiniest of cracks in our spiritual armor is often all chaos needs to take root and lead the afflicted down the path of damnation.
Cenobite?
Now, that being said,
he opened my box and so I came.
From becoming corrupted by chaos, having a strong sense of discipline.
I mean, you know, chaos corruption aside, if they're presenting me that kind of hunkiness, I don't think you need the temptation of chaos to pull me in. You provide me a sexy ass himbo looking dude, I'm there. I'm instantly gone. Like chaos can have me. I'm a simple bitch, okay?
And unwavering faith in the Emperor being the most prominent methods. But sometimes this can actually end up working against us. Strict adherence to tradition and belief in our order's most ancient of creeds can render us blind to chaotic influence gestating just beneath the surface. There have been many documented accounts wherein the truly faithful end up unknowingly pushing the agenda of chaos by believing their actions to be righteous and in service to the God Emperor.
Hey, look, more examples of real-world shenanigans being iterated through Warhammer.
That voice that whispers to her in the back of her mind to spill ever more blood and keep taking the skulls of heretics might not actually be the Emperor speaking to her, but in fact maybe something far more ancient and
somebody changed their caller ID on their phones to be like, hello, yes, this is definitely the Emperor and not Chaos. Yeah, we want you to kill people. That doesn't sound very Emperor of you. Yeah, well, I am the Emperor and I'm telling you to kill people. Well, seeing as you're definitely the Emperor because your caller ID says you are, we're gonna go kill people.
Predatory. If you've ever played Warhammer 40k Darktide,
yes!
You've had a zealot in your party.
I've been playing so much Darktide recently.
The Imperium likes to say, blessed is the mind too small for doubt. In cases such as these, the ability to doubt may very well have ended up saving them. And think about that. Doubt on one hand is what lets chaos in, and can also be what protects us against it.
You guys come join our Discord. We play a lot of Darktide at the moment.
Chaos corruption works.
What the hell is this guy here? I know these are like the goofy ass sound marines, but why is this guy just got like why is this guy got like the stupid Beetlejuice kissy lips face on his chest? That's not gonna instill fear in me. That's just gonna make me want to get a smooch.
Chaos is chaotic. For every rule it seems to follow, it simultaneously breaks a dozen more.
Yes, Noise Marine, sorry.
Its unknowable nature making it that much more dangerous and contagious. With all that said, it seems impossible
Ooh.
that somebody could be
That's a bit like my
completely immune to
Berserker from
corruption,
Darktide, actually.
especially considering the fact that in many of the stories, we've seen chaos corrupt things that don't even have feelings, such as inanimate objects, machines, or even AIs. However, there are a plethora of factions that, for one
Because
reason or another,
I think the problem that you got to get by with Warhammer is that chaos and its corruption, it doesn't adhere to your typical sense of physicality, like what you would consider to be something that should be corruptible. Like chaos doesn't adhere to that. Chaos is immaterial. It's not caring for the clichéness of, oh well, it's conscious, and therefore that's the only thing that's corruptible. Because it's more than that. It's the corruption of anything. The corruption of what is what is once pure to be something that is no longer pure, physical or conscious or not.
To be nearly immune to the influence of chaos, such as the Space Marine chapters of the Exorcists or the Black Templars, who are documented as having a higher spiritual resistance than others. This has led many to believe that they are in fact immune.
Hey, if you want to resist chaos, just download a better firewall.
Like
Duh.
Draco, a Black Templar who was declared excommunicate traitoris for quote-unquote deeds too terrible to recount. If a single individual falls within a faction, then they cannot truly claim.
And this is more of a thought concept. I wonder if somebody who's been corrupted to chaos ultimately can be uncorrupted. Like somebody who's been completely converted to chaos. I wonder if there's a way for them to come back. And I wonder if there's been like things of that happening in the past. I imagine so. Like I feel as though there's not enough talk about reversing the corruption. I know it was like briefly gleamed on in the first Space Marine game, how Titus kind of looked like he'd been corrupted by the by the MacGuffin that you get, but then it turns out he wasn't, and like he was just resistant apparently.
To be completely immune. True immunity is
would be an interesting thing to look at.
But within the lore, there are a few examples of this happening. Within the Imperium, the four predominantly believed to be immune are the Adeptus Custodes. And with each of these examples, the reason for their immunity is completely different. The Grey Knights were created with gene seed derived directly from the God Emperor himself.
Ah yes, Daddy's special little boys.
The Custodes were crafted by his own hands and were engineered from the ground up
to
be
yeah.
incapable of disloyalty.
That's why I keep thinking I know the lore.
Blanks, meaning chaos quite literally can't.
Oh, that's right. Not even GW knows the lore.
Finally, the Sisters of Battle
Nobody knows the lore of Warhammer.
Shielded from corruption by the aegis of their faith in the Emperor. And as a secondary cautionary measure, no psychers have ever been allowed.
Because that's kind of like the thing with all of like the Emperor's factions, like the Imperium, the Space Marines, the Custodes. Every single faction of the Imperium, they have their specializations, but they're all different shades of. Like every single one of them has some problematic sentiment to them. The Sisters of Battle are unnecessarily xenophobic to everything. The Black Templar are the same. The Ultramarines are unnecessarily devoted to a fault. Friggin' the Imperial Guard, they are the representation of the humankind, but they're easily corruptible. There's no good faction in the Empire, but all together, they make up what could be only considered to be maybe one functional human being.
Within their ranks. The outlier amongst these four groups is without question the Sisters of Battle, as they aren't gifted with a genetic heritage, whether naturally occurring like with the Sisters of Silence or artificial like with the Grey Knights or Custodes, that grant them immunity. Outside of their power armor, it's important to remember that
I can't look at those helmets without thinking, why are you wearing panties on your head? The Panty Knights of the Sisters of Battle.
They're just mortal women. Ones that have become resistant to chaos by being brought up within the most ruthless military.
Oh yeah, they're not even like proper space marines, are they? They are just literally women, like just regular women.
Tempered through decades of service within the
like the most powerful women of the Imperium, or the average Essex woman.
Adeptus Sororitas. And it's also worth pointing out that even with the Grey Knights, they cannot technically declare immunity, as there was that famous story of one that traveled all the way through the realm of Slaanesh without becoming corrupted, only finally falling when he marched all the way to the throne of a literal chaos god and stared them down. Admittedly,
Oh.
these are pretty extreme.
Well, why would you do
circumstances
that?
most Grey Knights are never going to have to do.
That's like being dared to.
Sure if
That's like being gullible enough to be dared to jump off a cliff and saying, "Oh, how high?"
Otherwise, somebody was going to bring it up in the comment section. Anyways, outside of having a space magic-y genetic heritage that renders somebody immune, there are a lot of traits an individual can possess, as well as certain actions they can take or items they can utilize to ward off
Dax, have a good
corruption.
night.
And the sisters check off every single one of these boxes. Each and every one of
This kind of means, right, that the Sisters of Battle are actually one of the most powerful factions in the entire Imperium. Space Marines need to have goated with the source levels of steroids. You know, they're juiced. They are juicing out the wazoo to become as big and strong as they are. And even those guys get fucked over by chaos. But with no enhancements whatsoever, other than the faith in our Lord and Savior, Shia LaBeouf, the Sisters of Battle not only are almost as efficient as them, but in some respects are stronger and capable to wield just as much power. Like, these ladies didn't need that sauce being pushed through their veins. They became so strong just by faith alone, which kind of shows how powerful they are. Thank you, 3-sub.
One of them has a mind
Thermal
of steel
custodes
and
are
implacable
real.
will.
We
They
discussed
are
that already, we know.
adherents to the Imperial Creed and have an unshakable faith in the Emperor. None of them have psychic abilities.
God,
They are
weren't you here like
trained in the
5
nature
minutes
of
ago when
the
you talked
heretic
about
in
this?
order to
God.
identify heretical lore and acts. And finally, because they don't have artificially extended
Yes!
lifespans like
Yes!
the Space Marines
What I
do,
mean.
yet also live a life of constant, never-ending war, most of them will perish in the line of duty.
Neurons, they do become activated. Now, I'm not saying that I appreciate muscle, that I am a muscle enjoyer. However, if you present me a muscle mommy, oh boy.
Long before corruption really has an opportunity to dig its roots in deep. That last one is actually a common problem with Inquisitors who are deemed valuable enough to be given access to the best rejuvenat treatment that money can buy. It's not uncommon for the ones that have lived for multiple centuries to eventually push further and further down the path of the radical,
Yes.
which opens them up to chaos.
The longer
But
things
that's a
go,
topic
the
for
more
another
chance
video.
you have, because
After
you're
all
more
of that,
open
one
to the
can further
bullshit.
protect themselves through
You've seen
the
enough
use
of the
physical
stuff
devices
you've been
that
part
have
of to be
spiritual
jaded, and you're thinking,
significance, such as
how does the other
purity
side
seals,
taste?
warding circles, protective hymns, etc., etc. And these are all tools utilized by the sisterhood. Because of all of this, it's no wonder that everyone believes they are incorruptible. But at the end of the day, we know this isn't true. They are still mortal and thus valuable. They still exhibit human traits that chaos.
That design, though. Oh, God, I love some of those chaos designs. That's Nurgle, right? Like Daddy Nurgle? All the spikes has to be, right?
Can prey upon. And with all that said, we do have 3 short stories I want to examine in more depth today. Ones that actually show us several prominent sisters of battle who have sided
Could be
with
Corn?
the arch enemy.
I would've
And
thought
we'll
Nurgle.
kick things
Green tends
off
to be more
with the very
Nurgly.
first sister to fall. Sister
Corn is more
Superior
red and black.
Muriel Sabathiel, a woman that
At least
many could
not as far as I'm
rightfully
aware.
view as the chaos equivalent of the first living saint
Ugh.
of the chaos sisterhood. She appeared in
looks
the
so
short
much like
story,
the girl from The
Invitation by
Ring.
Dan Abnett.
Whatever her
This
name
story
is.
takes place on the
I remember
world
the
of
name.
Calder's
I'm ADHD,
Pond,
help me.
where the local population has recently been subjected to a grisly series of mass murders. Whoever the culprit
And this is different from any other day in the Warhammer universe because, like, saying that the local populace has been subject to some mass murders in the Warhammer universe is like saying that you breathe oxygen. It's a given. That's just your life in this universe. Ah, yes, we had a murder capita of less than 29 last night. We're at an all-time low for this week.
was not trying to hide their actions, and further was leaving behind taunting messages claiming to be a fallen sister of battle. Ovlov Kurtz, regent of the city of Karagard, was deeply disturbed by this proclamation, but couldn't
John
bring
Cena
himself to
looking dude.
believe such blasphemy. He assumed that this was simply some bloodthirsty heretic that sought to besmirch the good name of the sisterhood. In order to put a stop to this, he did 2 things. First,
Isn't it funny how so many games, like, I know this is going to be a really funny comparison to make. There's a lot of parallels with Helldivers and Warhammer. And it's about propaganda. even though subjectively what you're looking at might be innocent, because it doesn't align with your leader's beliefs, it's designated as heresy, treason, or an enemy of the state. Warhammer, heresy. Helldivers, treason. It's the same kind of notion, it's just Helldivers is very satire. It's much more of a satire and a bit more comedic. But it's the same notion. And that's kind of what, like, that's why you can never take the Imperium as, like, the good guys. Because realistically, most of the things they're fighting against were kind of just casually living their own lives. And they were like, yeah, you know what? You'd be better with our subjugation rather than your own. We're going to help you by ruling you with force. And if you don't like that, you're a heretic.
He hired a skilled man-catcher to track down the murderer by the name of Teget, an ex-militarum soldier who had spent time as a stormtrooper. So, needless to say, he was very good at what he did.
All I can think about is the Helldivers coming in and... Dude, the Helldivers would do really well with the Corpse Krieg, wouldn't they?
Who was attempting to tarnish their name. Now, he was expecting the response to take a couple of weeks, and for them to just send out one of their menials to look into it. Yet, only a few days later, 3 full-fledged sisters from the Order of Our Martyred Lady appeared in his chamber. One of them, to Ovlov's shock, was the renowned canoness Olga Karamins.
You keep forgetting that every, like, one Space Marine would be the equivalent of an entire battalion of Imperial soldiers. Like, pound for pound, if you have a single Space Marine joining a battle, that battle becomes infinitely more in your favor just with that one Space Marine. Which then you realize the power creep when you see multiple Space Marines fighting multiple Chaos Warriors, and realizing that you as an Imperial Guardsman are nothing but a minute gnat by comparison.
Suspiciously secretive. There was none of the ordinary pomp and ceremony, no escort, no entourage. They all came dressed in veiled black robes that only slightly betrayed the power armor underneath. Clearly shaken by their arrival, he begs for their forgiveness for not having prepared appropriately. But he questions the need
Simp's
for them
not
to come
simping
in
properly
person like this in the first place. The canoness tells him they were simply in the area and figured this was something they could.
No, that is instantaneously suspect. That's the same thing in Helldivers as saying, well, we were just casually on this planet terraforming it, and oh god, the Terminids, they just came out of nowhere and started attacking. We did nothing. There was nothing we did to provoke the Terminids. No, nothing we did.
Quickly clear up rather than wasting time letting the message go through all of the proper channels. He's still uneasy, but he tells them that he does understand the urgency. He had sent the message through those discreet channels in the first place to protect the sister's reputation. The idea of a sister of battle becoming corrupted and then going on a murder spree was ridiculous. Even suggesting such a thing was a blasphemy.
The Empire says that the Imperial man says that all sisters of battle and Space Marines are uncorruptible, and anyone that believes otherwise is a heretic. Yes.
Creeping into his soul. The canoness demands he tell her where the man-catcher was headed. She tells him
Man-catcher.
No matter how skilled he believed
Man-catcher. What kind of name is that? Some VTube name wannabe lookalike piece of shit? Ah, yes, I'm the Man-catcher, and today I'm debuting my new model, Man-catcher-S.
He had signed his
You made tier 3
death
sub now.
A terrible realization starts to dawn on him, but he seeks confirmation by asking her what exactly it was that she was telling him. She snaps at him, saying that she isn't telling him anything, and for his sake, it's better that way. His voice, now tiny and terrified, tells her that he made the man-catcher carry a tracker.
Damn, it's like listening to those Essex women talking to their white husbands.
The story then jumps forward.
You pathetic gnat!
Tracking the killer through the snow and up into the mountains. The 2 battle sisters end up pushing forward to scout ahead and end up getting picked off one by one by an unseen assailant. The canoness calls to both of them over the Vox by name, but when all she hears is static, she pauses, and a few moments later, she speaks a third name. Muriel, can you hear me, she says. The fallen sister Muriel responds, asking the canoness if she was
design, though. Ugh.
When the canoness tells her she was, Muriel says good. That had been her intention. Her dark master, Balzervit, expected much from her, and she wouldn't be able to accomplish these things with her former allies constantly on her tail. The canoness tells her that
they
she
got
still
PK'd,
wishes
man.
to save her. That
Betrayal.
Back to the
Team
Emperor.
killer.
Muriel denies her. She says that she had become disillusioned with the Emperor and she had willingly...
Look, I don't mean to like be brash about this, but if you told me that I could get a tongue like that by joining Chaos, there ain't even any doubt that I'd be joining Chaos. Think of all the places you could scratch.
Given herself to the
And nothing
role
else.
of excess
Absolutely
and mesh.
nothing else.
It's then that the man-catcher from before, now having been corrupted by the fallen sister, steps out of the darkness from behind the canoness, poised to attack. With her attention momentarily turned, Muriel lunges out of the shadows and buries her blade deep in the canoness's body, all the way to the spine. With the three sisters defeated, the story ends with the man-catcher asking her if this is what corruption feels like, and if so, it feels good. Muriel tells him that she still has—
It feels good. What you miss is, it feels good currently. All the chaos and evil guise you in with temptations of grandeur and opportunity in the moment. You're looking in the short-sightedness of things. What you don't then think about is the future. Which, funnily enough, is exactly how British politicians think about our country. Who would have thought that Labour and the Conservatives were just an allegory for the Chaos Gods?
had use of him, that he would continue to serve her in their next task, which was to hunt down some Eldari. Although this is the only source we have where Muriel herself makes a direct appearance, her legacy would have wide-reaching consequences and would be further explored in the short story Heart and Soul. Although exact dates are not given here, it's implied that a good amount of time has passed between both tales.
I'm gonna have to read this book, actually. I used to read Warhammer books all the time when I was in high school.
Again from the Order of Our Martyred Lady, that are coming to the end of a long and bloody crusade. You see, they've been constantly—
Admittedly, in my stupidity when I was younger, when I read my very first ever Warhammer book, I picked up another Warhammer book and wondered why the story wasn't the same. Like, I was so... Like, this is back when I was very new to Warhammer and I didn't realize the scope of everything. I was really wondering why there wasn't just, like, one specific narrative between these books. Like, in my mind, every book had to be sequential. So I picked up this first book and was like, oh, this is really cool. And I got the next one, I was like, wait, what happened to that guy that was in the last book? Why are you going to this other planet? What the fuck's going on? And then I had a friend explain to me, yeah, the Warhammer universe is huge and none of the books are really relevant to each other. They're all very hyperbolic, so yeah, this is a bit of an experience.
Tracking the whereabouts of a brutal Khornate warlord known as the
Also, yes, I also used
this
to read.
individual has led a
Reading?
bloody
In this
war
day and
across
age?
the entirety of
In this
the
economy?
Segmentum. Every single world the Iconoclast showed up on would quickly fall to chaos corruption. And
Yeah,
by the
it's
time
also
the
very
sisters
hard to feel
arrived-
committed to Warhammer books, considering the amount GW retcons their own bullshit these days. I guarantee you, everything that I read from those books back in the day doesn't even make sense now by comparison to the modern lore.
To deliver the Emperor's judgment, they would come face to face with a new army of blood-crazed Khorne worshippers. The Iconoclast always managing to
Corn
just
for
slip
the
away
corn
before the
flakes!
fighting concluded, to go on to another planet and repeat the process. However, this time the sisters believe it will be different. They've tracked the Iconoclast down to a desecrated chapel of the Emperor on the world of
Okay, this right here, this is why I love playing Darktide. Like, say what you will about the game itself, even though Darktide now is in the best state it's ever been gameplay-wise, Darktide does an amazing job of its environments. Like, Darktide is the best depiction of the gothic, like, Lovecraftian stylings of the Warhammer universe. Like, it is so grimdark, so detailed. So I have, on a number of occasions, just gone into games solo, at the lowest difficulty, purely so that I could just sit there and enjoy the environments. The level of detail it's an art form in of itself. They do, like, the level designers for Darktide do not get enough credit. Go into Darktide at some point and just look at how awesome those environments are. There's so much, like, diegetic storytelling of what's happening in that place just from the environment alone. And I honestly, I do feel like Darktide deserves more credit for its aesthetic than it gets.
And their Mechanicus allies that have been
It is the best
fighting
depiction
beside
of
them
Warhammer in a
have
game,
erected
in my
force
eyes.
barrier around its vicinity. If people on
Other
the
than maybe
outside
Space
of said
Marine.
barrier can freely move inside of it, but nothing.
I mean,
would be
who's
able to
excited for
get
Space Marine
out.
2?
Further, everything inside of it was locked in a pseudo-stasis field, meaning that time moved dramatically slower for them. However, right before the sisters can move in and deal the killing blow, they see a Thunderhawk descending to the surface with reinforcements. The sisters are confused by this. Why would the sorority?
I love the fact that we have somebody in the chat called Slanesh God.
At the very end of the crusade, and not only
Couldn't be more poetic.
all of the previous battles. The sisters who step out, however, are not from their order. They are from the Valorous Heart and are led by a Celestian named Olinde. Muriel, the leader of the previous sister group, realizes that she
I really want one day, this is might be just like a hee-hoo-hoo. I really want just some... I want like a Sister of Battle or a Space Marine to have some really basic bitch name. Like, they all have these really poetically creative names like Selendis or Astartes or whatever. Can we just have a Space Marine called Bob? Like Space Marine Bob or John or Susan. That'd be funny.
Woman. The two of them had fought together.
Yeah,
on the
Space
Icarus
Marine
front
Tom,
10 years back.
joined
But
by
when she
his
brings this up,
custodes
Olinde doesn't
Jerry.
seem to recognize her.
Mr.
When
John
Muriel presses
Warhammer.
her, she nods, telling her that
Larry
of
the
course, she must
Space
have simply
Marine.
forgotten, and a lot had changed in 10 years. She gets down to business and tells Muriel and her sisters that they had done fine work.
The
crusade
I'm 2
had
days
come
from
to an
retirement
end,
Space
as the
Marine.
Valorous Heart would take things from here and kill the iconoclasts themselves.
Today on this exciting episode of Warhammer 40k, we got John Space Marine going head to head with the Khorne Empire. Will he make it out alive on his intrepid journey to try and stop the corruption? Well, you gotta sit back and find out today on Warhammer 40,000.
Ship it. Ship it. Ship it. Dude, we need to get some funny Warhammer series going. We've had so many, like, Warhammer series or, like, shorts or things like that that are very serious. When are we going to start getting Warhammer cartoons? I know that it's, like, it's a bit of a caveat, but... When are we going to get a Flash Gits Warhammer video like this? When are we going to get a Warhammer series in this sort of stuff? Bring Warhammer and heresy purging to the younger generation. If you want to make the younger generation get into Warhammer, give them something like this. Just saying.
And to say that there's
GW, if you want to listen, GW, I know you're struggling, but I will fix the entire universe for you. Hire me with coffee, donuts, and minimum wage, and I will fix the entire Warhammer universe for you.
100 battlefields to get here. Their leader tells them
That's
that
simple.
she wasn't making a request, and if they prefer, she could make it an order. There is a suggestion of them both going in to kill the heretic together, a request that is denied by the newcomers. Eventually, one of the original group's Mechanicus...
That's not a Mechanicus. There's no way that's a Mechanicus. You can see skin. This must be like, oh, he must be a new initiate or something. And if you're truly a devout Adeptus Mechanicus, the fact that you're willing to show skin is an affront to the machine gods themselves.
ally steps in to point out that even though Olinde outranks Muriel, both groups have a warrant of authority issued by their respective high canonesses, and if an agreement could not be reached, the only one that could technically settle a matter like this was the Abbess Sanctorum on Ophelia 7. Technically speaking, they could send out a
That sounds like a
request for
planet
them to
name.
resolve this matter, but it could take
Dude,
months.
I'll be real. They could put any like fancy sounding name, and I would just have to agree that that has to be a word of some kind. Ah, yes, I am Adeptus Sororitas, Melendis Fortuitus Inceptus Dingustongus, and we must take you to Loronda Abtura Sphinctus 9 for standing trial of your crimes against the Codexius Spartasius Bodacious Nonsensicus. For real, my dude.
To receive an answer. Due to the time dilation of the force field, however, the iconoclast wasn't technically going anywhere anytime soon. Oleande tells them to send the message, then her and her sisters turn and depart to meet back in their Thunderhawk. The entire situation doesn't really make a lot of sense, and the sisters of the martyred
what Wes Warhammer doesn't realize is what he just said could have been the entire video. But he could have started this video and said, none of this makes sense. End the video.
Are confused, angry, and hurt by the newcomer's arrival.
Also, an allegory for how the Warhammer community feels about Warhammer currently. Hurt, upset, and distraught.
The Emperor. When she suddenly hears bolter fire ringing out outside, she rushes back out to see all of the Mechanicus members dead, except for the one from before, who tells her that Oleande and her group betrayed them and went inside.
Yep, I totally believe him. I totally believe him. He's definitely not up to something suspect with the machine gods. He's definitely not worshipping the Catan at the center of Mars. Nope.
You have to understand that what they're experiencing right now is an unthinkable impossibility. From the very first days of their training, in every convent and in every order, the sisters were taught that no sororitas had ever fallen. It was the bedrock upon which their unbreakable conviction was built. To even dare...
Why does that sound like a Trumpism? Trump standing in front of the in front of Congress. I'll be president for all eternity. I'll have a second term and a third term and a fourth term. Ooh, fuck her right in the pussy. And she's gone.
Just otherwise was to court censure of the greatest severity. Yet, for all intents and purposes, it seemed like the unthinkable had happened. Sisters of battle had turned against the Imperium. Rattling through their minds was the damning unspoken words
Again, propaganda.
Dare not voice: treachery, betrayal, disloyalty. Muriel words they dared not voice: treachery, betrayal, disloyalty.
Huh. I thought they were supposed to be talking about the Adeptus Sororitas. But instead they're using a photo of the best-looking Essex woman? I'm really confused. I thought this was a Warhammer video.
Loyalty. Muriel will not accept this. There had to be some other explanation. They rush inside of the chapel and find an absolute gore fest. There are bodies everywhere, scattered across the floor and hanging from hooks in the ceiling. They press in deeper and find what appears to have been an ambush site. Most of the Sisters of the Valorous Heart lay dead in the center of the room, surrounded by the bodies of cultists. One of them was still clinging to life, and she tells them that the others were fighting against the Iconoclast and they had to hurry. They continue their pursuit and find Oleande locked in combat with the heretical warlord and a group of frothing corn worshippers. She's holding her own.
Frothing? What a descriptor. I mean, to be fair, that does sound pretty appropriate for corn.
Miria is joining the fighting, obliterating cultist after cultist with volleys of bolter fire. It's then that she hears
that description sounds awfully indicative of the Astartes series. You guys remember that one? Where they're going down the hallway with the guns going and the little cultisty dudes are just like, oh, we can't stop the space. Dead. Just like spatter.
Hears a scream and turns her attention back to Oleande, who has one of the Iconoclast's 2 sickle swords sticking out of her chest.
Oh
In
no!
all these years of hunting this individual, this is the first time she's ever gotten so close to the warlord. It wore a strange suit of armor that looked like it was made out of porcelain and was completely featureless. It made them look like a type of demented mannequin. The Iconoclast turned their attention to her and opened
demons?
its mask to reveal a face that looked identical to Oleande's.
Oh.
Miria calls her a demon and demands to know
Dark
what
Link
kind of
moment?
chaos trickery this was. But the Iconoclast just
I'm you, but better.
laughs, saying that she's flattered, but she's no demon. At least not yet. And the only trickery here was from the pretender at her feet. She tells her that she was once a sister of the Valorous Heart, but after she had defected and became a follower of Khorne, the Order saw fit to cover it up by having this woman take on her name and likeness, so none would ever learn of her treachery and the Order's greatest shame. Miria calls her
then you start realizing your Order isn't as devout as you would like them to make you believe. Like, oh no, there's no way that guys, this isn't treason, but I think Super Earth were the cause of the Turbicide. Redacted.
No sororitas had ever fallen. Everyone knew that. The very idea sickened her on a level she thought impossible.
Heresy! Treason!
She tells the Iconoclast that she knew Sister Oleande, and she would never give herself to the ruinous powers. This is what the Iconoclast had to say. Think, Miria. Didn't you wonder how it was my army could stay one step ahead of you for so long? And didn't you ask yourself how I could know the tactics of the sororitas so well? She let out a sigh. Remember the woman you fought with at the Icarus front? You saw me, even if you never wished to admit it. You saw how much I loved the cut and the kill. She made a deep purring growl. And after a while, the faith and fire our rancid corpse emperor gave me wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted blood and skulls. She leered at Muriel, her violent desire leaking into every word. Corn answered my need. Muriel watched as she lifted her.
I feel as though, and this is like a bit of a speculation, I feel as though at some point, with the way the fight goes on between the quote-unquote good and the bad side, like the shit and the more shit versions of Warhammer, eventually I feel like there's going to be one big overarching enemy that comes out. Think of like Mass Effect, right? In Mass Effect, you've got all the different factions and species and whatever fighting each other, and then at the end, the ultimate evil, the Reapers, to unify the entirety of the galaxy. I hope they don't do that, because I feel like that would be A, antithetical to how Warhammer has been depicted, but also, like, it doesn't need it. I feel like having this one overarching, like, evil sort of thing. I mean, I know you have the Catan and the old ones per se, but I don't think it's in the Warhammer universe. I don't think it would work having one one galactic alliance, as it were, like one unified galactic enemy. I mean, I suppose in some respects the Tyranids could maybe be considered that, because technically you've got like Tyranids coming from all of the reaches of the galaxy, from outside of what is the known universe for Warhammer. So really, the Tyranids are kind of that, but. I don't know. I doubt GW will ever make a definitive like assertion for anything like that, because the second you do that, it kind of tips the balance of preference towards the factions. Because right now, every single faction has their strengths and weaknesses. But when you make one that is distinguishably larger or more of a threat than all of the others, instantly there's that bias towards them. At least that's the way my mind's working with it.
Blade, the grotesque action.
It's an interesting concept, anyway.
To melt away, she spoke.
Hi, Yenny. How you doing?
You think I am the only one to fall? The figure in white laughed, and the harsh sound cascaded off the broken walls. The only one who willingly burned her oath for greater power? You know better than that, Sister Muriel. After all, it was your order that carries the stain of being first to give up a daughter to the Eightfold Path. Do not speak that name. The wounded battle sister coughed up blood as she shouted out the words. Sister Superior Muriel.
What is that picture? That doesn't even look like Warhammer. That looks like a night elf from World of Warcraft. Also, to iterate my point again, like, if there was to be a greater evil in Warhammer, it's either going to be the Tyranids or the Necrons, or they'll bring in another faction like the Catan or the old ones. But I know they won't, because the second they do that, they'll push things into an element of like definitiveness. And GW sells their entire IP off of the ongoing nature of the universe. So making a definitive, like, this is the ultimate evil would ruin the sales for most of their other stuff. Because as we all know, everything in the GW in the Warhammer universe propagates not on how much sense it makes, but how much money it makes. Which is why we have female custodes being brought in. Not because they didn't exist before, but because now it makes a good time for them to be brought in for the sake of money. Because technically they did exist, but they could have stayed in austerity. But they didn't.
Sabathel, shouted the iconoclast. She of the order of our
Yeah, that's literally a night elf!
Onto the embrace of the Lord of Dark Delights.
That's not even Warhammer! I knew I'd recognize that armor!
She shook her head sadly, mockingly. As callow novices, we were taught that no sister ever falls, but Sabathel is known. She is the cautionary tale. How do you square that circle, Muriel?
Albeit, you have to realize that most of the galaxy's problems have been caused by humans.
She reached for an answer and could not find one. The iconoclast, Oleande, saw it in her eyes.
The Tau, they were just vibing.
Sabathel was
they had their problems, but they were very hyperbolic in their own situations.
The highest sister she enslaved herself from the order of
Eldar,
the Shroud,
they were pretty much their own problem. Dark Eldar kind of thing.
Quietly killed and cut out of history. Or
then the humans come along and are like, yes.
Oleande strode back to her.
We would like to bring problems to you. Our problems are now your problems.
The great lie of the Adeptus Sororitas, to shield its brittle heart and soul from the shattering truth
that and the
of
Catan.
chaos. She drew back.
Catan and humans
spat
are
in
about as
her
bad
own
as each other on
face.
that front.
You see before you the blood-soaked shame of the valorous heart. So humiliated they were by my defection to the true gods that they made this lie. Took a sister and gave her my aspect so that none would know. And they've been following your crusade ever since, Muriel, waiting for this moment to come in and end me, to seal the secret forever and burn out the indignity that is the heretic Oleande, the iconoclast who dared to disown them. Before she can speak any more blasphemies, one of the other sisters opens up on her with a bolter set to burst fire, knocking her backwards into a pile of debris. This enrages
How
the
dare she
iconoclast,
speak
who
against the
leaps
word
back
of
to her
our
feet.
Lord and
She has
Savior,
a
the Emperor of
crater in her chest
mankind?
from where the shot connected, and inside
How dare
where
you
her
speak
heart
something that
should be
might be
is a
true but
writhing
goes
mass
against
of
our beliefs?
tentacles.
Heresy, I
Muriel found
say!
the sight of the corruption
Let's not
revolting,
listen
and
to
she threw
potential
herself at
other
the
sides of the
heretic,
story.
their weapons
Heresy!
meeting again and again, corrupted steel clashing against revving tungsten fangs. They were equally matched. The iconoclast had been trained in the same combat tactics that she was. Further, Muriel could feel her bloodlust growing more intense every moment that she spent in the desecrated chapel. Korn was whispering in her ears to give in and join them. She had to
SpaghettiOs.
fight to keep herself from licking the splattered blood off of her
Star
face.
Wars moment.
Every time she managed to land a blow, more of the tentacles would burst out of the new wound, each ending in vicious lamprey-like mouths that writhed and squirmed in the air, searching for blood
Yes,
and meat.
Daddy Nurgle.
The iconoclast bellowed out to her not to defy the will of the blood god. There would be no defeating her, as Korn had revived her countless times. The entire fight.
This is very
was
much a
pointless.
Star Wars moment.
Despite this, Muriel fought on, strengthened by her faith in the Emperor, and eventually, the other Oleande managed to pry the sword she had been stabbed with out of her chest, causing a huge gush of blood to come spilling out, the scent of which caught the iconoclast's attention, who turned her head and licked her lips. The split second of inattention was all the opportunity Muriel needed. She roared as she brought
go-go
chainsword
juice.
down in a snarling
I mean,
arc
I was
that
rather
severed Oleande's
thirsty.
sword arm above the elbow, cutting noisily through splintering porcelain armor, meat, and bone with a
Blech.
grinding howl. Her foe was staggered, but to Muriel's disgust, the detached arm disgorged a bulk of pale tendrils at its severed end, which began to propel it across the ground towards her. like
This
a fat
sounds very
maggot
much like a
busting
hentai
for
I've seen.
carrion to consume. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and stamped the severed limb into a pulpy mess, grinding it into the broken tiles beneath until it stopped moving. At this point, the other Oleande managed to get to her feet and reignited her power sword. She was severely wounded, but that didn't matter. Her duty was undone. Though each and every step she took towards the heretic was torturous for her, she did not falter. This ends now, she declared, aiming her blade at the fallen one.
Whoops! Skip too far. Skip too far. Whoops. Wait, oh god.
Quietly. I must sacrifice. You must live. What didn't matter, her duty was undone, which began to the traitor whose face she shared.
Just I'm gonna leave a little pause so I know how to edit this out. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I oopsie didn't press the wrong button, so apologies if there was a little weird jump there. Isn't it kind of telling, though? Like, I would like to think that if you can always tell a good story writer and a good storyteller when, as they're describing the situation, you can visualize it in your head. As he's been talking about this, I could literally picture this entire fight scene in my head. And that's not because I'm on the spectrum and have fantasy battles in my head whenever I get bored, but...
Opened her mouth wide and shrieked, vomiting unhowled words into the air that curdled the blood in Muriel's veins. Tendrils grew out past her lips, from her nostrils, ears, and through the orbs of her eyes. The shrieking came
Sounds a bit
from
like how
hundreds of
VTubers
tiny
talk to each other.
lamprey moths, and the profane clamor made the air vibrate. Desecrated glassaic cracked and broke.
What the fuck did you
Dust
just say to
and
me?
Stones fell from the damaged ceiling above. Muriel and the Sister of the Valorous Heart shared a look, and they attacked the heretic as one. Blows from their swords rained down on the traitorous sororitas, chopping off divots of armor, slashing away pieces of quivering flesh. But even as Oleande fell to her knees, she was still screeching, still kept alive by whatever demonic parasite her blasphemous god had implanted in her. "You are already his," she brayed, her mouth choked with convulsing cilia. "It is inevitable." The Sisters of Battle are
Consider
drenched
me
in blood. Your
immersed, if
faith
you
is a
will.
lie. You all walk the Skull Road. Muriel raised her chainsaw.
Oh, they
and glanced
fucked
at
up.
the warrior. Together, then,
Was it
the
worth
battle
it?
sister gave a weary nod. Together, aye. In a single united motion, both of them plunged their blades deep into Oleande's chest cavity and silenced her. The heretic's body collapsed in on itself to become a mess of awful and warped bone.
This is a very Star Wars themed story. I'm getting like so many images of like Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader in like episode 2 or 3 where they're fighting with the dark side. But then that end scene where they plunge the blade into friggin' what's her face? That's very much like episode 3 where they're on the ship and they're dealing with Dooku, but then the Luke versus Darth Vader in episode 5. Yeah, you know what I mean? Star Wars. Star Wars.
Bone, whatever power from the warp
I know what
that
I'm
kept
talking
the
about.
woman alive was suddenly gone, and all her deaths returned 1,000-fold. After the battle concludes, but before they can exit the temple, the pretender Oleande pulls from her robes a crack grenade and arms it. The
Oh,
sisters
God.
of the martyred lady realize with dawning horror what this means.
Wait, she had a crack grenade this entire
So
time?
long as the others remained alive that knew of the order's shame. She asks her if this is true, and Oleande confirms it, saying that any who know of their shame must not be allowed to speak of it. She walks up to her and tells her that she's sorry, placing her hands over the other sisters, both holding the crack grenade together. You have sacrificed so much to this mission, she told her. Your very self, and I have given much too. My service and my blood, my sisters. But if we perish here today, that duty ends, and the enemy still endures. Muriel nodded towards the remains of the heretic, not just the foe without, but the foe within. She closed her eyes for a moment and remembered the horrible sense
The
of
foe
temptation
within. This is
roasting
some
on the
poetic
edges of
license
her
in
thoughts.
its heart,
To
good
live
lord.
was to be in battle with it day after day, but to live was to also defy it and make each breath a victory against the darkness.
I would like to think there's one word you could use for most of what happens in the Warhammer universe. Hypocrisy. Absolutely contradicting hypocrisy. Think about it.
The injured woman's grip on the grenade slackened. But this is my failure, she said quietly. I must sacrifice. You must live.
I mean,
Muriel insisted.
you say
Sister
that.
Oleande must
You don't
live, else
have
the
to do
Arcanum will
anything.
have their
Where's
victory,
your free
and
will?
all you have
Where's
done,
your
all we
independence?
have
Think
done,
for yourself,
will be
damn
for
it.
naught. Every sister in attendance vows on the honor of the Order of Serenity that they will carry this secret to their graves unspoken. Oleande eventually accepts, and they all leave together. What will I tell my kinswomen when I return to our convent, said Oleande. I was not expected to live beyond my mission. Adversity is a test, sister. We must never fail it. Muriel strode towards the gateway, drawing herself up, her head held high as was fitting a victor. She paused on the threshold and offered the other woman her hand, and only the God Emperor can decide when our duty is ended. So let's recap all of the takeaways from this story. First and foremost, even though we unfortunately didn't get a true follow-up to Muriel Sabathiel, this second story implies that she lived a pretty crazy life and managed to spread her corruption to a whole bunch of other sisters as well. This iconoclast...
It's more to prove the point that, yes, there are bad women in the Warhammer universe. This is a 50-minute video to say that, you know what? Women can be bad. Maybe that's the entire point of this video. Maybe Wes was doing the meta thing of being like, oh, everyone's talking about women in the Warhammer universe. I know of women in the Warhammer universe, but better.
seems to hold her in great reverence. So much so.
So what
that
we've
she
learned is
actually kinda
women
reminds me of one of
bad.
the Sororitas'
Women
saints,
bad.
as if she was the first saint
Just like
of the
other
Chaos
people.
Sisters of battle. We also now have direct confirmation that these sisters are not as immune to corruption as their order leads them to believe. Now, considering that these are two short stories that were both written kind of a long time ago, and we haven't exactly
Oh shit!
received...
James Swallow was the person who wrote the book that I first read. The very first ever book I read of the Warhammer universe. Which probably explains why I kind of recognize the storytelling method.
any new Chaos Sisters information, I'm not exactly holding my breath. for
Okay,
Games
somebody in
Workshop.
my chat just said, next you're going to tell me water is wet. Actually, water isn't wet. Water is merely the fluid. Water is not wet in of itself. It provides wetness when absorbed by things. Actually, and I know this because I have glasses.
To introduce Chaos Sisters to the tabletop game or the larger narrative anytime soon. Although that would certainly be awesome.
Scientifically.
The final story that I want to talk about is also the strangest example we have of a sister becoming corrupted, which for fans of the Dark Coil series and the rest of Peter Faveri's work will come as no surprise. And initially, she wasn't corrupted by chaos at all. She was taken...
Why do they make the Tyranid blood look so tasty? Like, not even like memeing on this one. That looks like some really juicy like Kool-Aid or something. Grape juice kind of stuff. Yummy. Like, just hold up that Tyranid.
Painted by something far more alien, the patriarch of a Genestealer cult. And
Now, I
know what you're
wonder
thinking.
what you
Wes,
taste like.
This is a video about Chaos Sisters of Battle. Why are you including a Genestealer cult sister here? And that's a very good question.
That's
First, it's
because
her
Genestealers
story
are
is a great
technically chaos.
example of how corruption, be it chaotic or alien in nature, can worm its way past the mental and
Isn't that kind of funny how, like, Chaos and the Tyranids have this kind of overlap where the Genestealers kind of make, even though they're Tyranids, they kind of have that same semblance of corruption as the Chaos. And there's that, like, almost like middle gap between Chaos, humans, and then Genestealers. And they're kind of like a mix of both, but not quite.
spiritual barricades of even the most devout of the Emperor's faithful. And 2, because the ending to her story is fucking crazy.
Because you
And
even
I
see,
don't think
you even
I've
get
ever seen
references
anything
to
like it anywhere else in the 40K
Genestealers
universe.
in Darktide and
The
how they're
sister's
kind of
name
like
is Itala,
pertinent to the
and
Chaos
her story
Gods,
is broken
like that
up into 2
overlap.
parts. The first section coming from the prologue of the novel Cult of the Spiral Dawn.
I wonder if we'll get
that was later
Genestealers in
re-released as
Darktide
Legends
at some
of the
point.
Dark Millennium Genestealer Cult, and the second half being in the short story To Cast a Hungry Shadow. In the prologue, we see a Genestealer in the infancy of formulating a new cult on the world of redemption. The creature has given the Genestealer's kiss to a handful of captured thralls who have gone out to further spread its corruption,
Oh no.
accumulating a sizable force.
Not another
But
cult.
It's not nearly
Damn it, it's
enough to take
VTubers
an
all over
entire
again.
world. This fledgling patriarch still doesn't know much about its surroundings, and is in the process of identifying structures of key importance and enemy factions that will stand in the way of its agenda. In order to learn more, it scours the Scorched World, navigating its secret pathways and familiarizing itself with the
Honestly,
new
out of
hunting
all the
grounds.
factions,
Eventually, by
Genestealers are
probing
probably the most
thoughts of its
terrifying.
thralls and the people of the world it comes into contact with, it learns of something known as the Sororitas. The word is unfamiliar to it, but the people who speak the name speak of them as great protectors that live in one of the world's many natural spires. It learns that this location they speak of has a great fortress abbey owned by the Sisterhood. of the
That's
Order
one of the
the
hype
Third
cities.
Eternal.
Actually, I think that might actually be Darktide art.
Fortress is defended by thick walls of ferrocrete and impenetrable iron gates.
Yeah,
Without
I
somebody
suppose
on
you would
the
say that they are
inside to
like the
open
Mind
those
Flayers.
gates
They
for the
kind of
Genestealer's
like
thralls,
subjugate,
the direct
indoctrinate,
assault
and
would be
convert.
doomed to fail.
and
But
mutate.
It realizes that there had to be something. No fortification was truly without a weakness. In order to probe for such a
I suppose look at it like this, right? The Chaos corrupt, the Tyranids mutate, and then the Tau convert, and then the Eldar, the Dark Eldar, turn you into furniture. Either way, humans tend to be the meat, if you will, for other factions.
it casts its consciousness out, gently gracing the mind of all of the sisters within, lingering just long enough to gather intel without raising suspicion. The sisters' minds were unlike anything the creature had ever encountered. From its perspective, their spirits were lined with what it referred to as seams of madness that ran through their spiritual armor. But in the vast majority of cases, this madness only strengthened the alloy of their resolve. That was all until its consciousness encountered a young woman named Sister Edelka.
So that's the funny thing. That's the funny comparison, right? Space Marines, they are devout by breeding. They are instigated this idea of loyalty to the Imperium from being literally bred to be that way. The Sororitas are taught their devotion. They are almost, in some respects, the Sororitas are the most devout because that's just how that's their entire being. They didn't need to get it injected into their genes. That is just what they're taught. They are the devoted. It's not saying that Space Marines aren't either, but there's this like interesting parallel between how the devotion works differently between Space Marines and the Imperial Guard versus the Sororitas. Like Sororitas are devoted to a fault, whereas Space Marines, that's just what they have been built to be. Taught versus nature versus nurture, basically.
Any formidable level of rank amongst her peers. It was within her mind that the creature found what it was searching for, the same fault lines from before, but ones that did not strengthen the soul, but instead had unknowingly become corrosive to it. Within her consciousness, it found the telltale signs of dark doubts and even darker.
Really though, this all sentiments the fact that humans are kind of bad. Yes, humans, we are a faulted species.
But it was the way the sisterhood treated suspected
He's going for happy ride. Look at him. He's having a good time.
And the horrific torment their order inflicted upon those they claimed to protect. It was these things.
What do you mean? Look at this guy. This guy's having a great time. He's getting a free roller coaster ride. I think, I don't know what he's talking about. These guys are having a great time.
Those they claimed to protect. It was these things that allowed the seed of doubt to take root. Her entire life, she was raised to revere the sisterhood as divine bearers of his holy will. And perhaps she was unprepared for the truth. And maybe she had been.
Oh my god, I haven't seen a heck. I like that from Tank Girls.
Any less brutal. But seeing firsthand
Or
the
Mad Max.
motto of innocence proves nothing carried out with such reckless
Innocence
abandon
proves nothing?
caused her to question
Sounds like
everything she
the
believed
average
to be true.
Twitter
Seeing an opportunity within her over 9 consecutive
White Knight.
nights, the patriarch gifted her with whispered questions that she thought were her own. Eventually, she began to see secret heresies in her own sisters, loyalty unraveled into loathing, then horror, and finally hatred. She realized with painful clarity that they served a lie. She was drawn deeper.
I also
and
love
deeper
the fact
into
that
sacred
between all
spiral
of these
until the
stories, it's the
patriarch's
same kind of
blessing
concept of the
became
corruption of
anointed
the
as its
Sisters of Battle,
first
but it's
apostle.
told so differently
On the
between
10th
them.
day, the patriarch rallied its followers to assault the abbey, its impenetrable gates having been opened for them in secret by the fallen sister. Each and every one of the sisters stationed here ended up getting slaughtered. And since the warning of what happened never got sent out, the Genestealer cult on this world would stay undetected for quite some time. The core tenets of its faith eventually spreading out across the stars and becoming the cult of the Spiral Dawn, an imperial sanctioned
Yeah,
sect
so
of the
replace the word cult or whatever with gangs and political overrule. There's a lot of allegory here, but it is a bit of a kind of a similarity to how like some countries in England, in our current world, get overthrown by subversion and regicide and all that jazz. Interesting.
imperial creed. Now, the next time we see Sister Italka was in the short story To Cast a Hungry Shadow. At this point, she's a lot older and has become a prominent member of the cult. It's implied that shortly after her betrayal, she met with the patriarch, received the Genestealer's kiss, and then now having the Genestealer's DNA inside of her, would go to take a partner and give birth to a new generation of cultists. Her son
Guys, you're too
Isaiah
young for this.
being
You're
one
too
of
young.
them.
Don't look.
It's also important to know that the cult of the Spiral Dawn is not the only cult that's operating on the world of redemption. As
Imagine how fucked your planet is. That you've got not only a Genestealer cult nurturing under the surface of your planet, but you've got multiple? How are you that bad at looking after your planet that you've got not one, but 2 world-ending cults? Oh, that's so stupid.
chaos had infected the planet long before the patriarch's arrival. In the story,
That
a new
also
chaos
defers
cult,
back to
the
my
cult
point
of the
earlier.
Scorched
The Chaos
Moon,
and the
has risen
Genestealers
up
are
to
very similar
challenge
to each
them.
other.
These guys were a bunch of blood-crazed Mad Max-style bikers who fought in the name of their scorched god. And they had a deep-seated hatred of the cult of the Spiral Dawn, as the majority of its members were actually previous Genestealer cultists that managed to break free of the Patriarch's control by being reborn in a fiery chaos ritual that allowed chaos corruption to purge them of taint.
Okay, so chaos can purge corruption, but when the Imperium wants to do it, man, being a human fucking sucks. You joined Chaos? Oh, you had a bit of a Tyranid infestation. That's fine. We've got a bit of Adderall. We can cleanse that right out. We got cream for it. We got fiery cream for it. If you're a regular ass human, now you're fucked. Oh, you got tainted by Genestealers? Oh, can't do nothing for you. Now the NHS can't fund it. Sorry.
Human and Xenos. Now, both of these groups are desperately in need of a psyker, but there hasn't been one on the planet in quite some time.
Nobody's in desperate need of a psyker because you're equally likely to get your brain exploded as well as the thing you're trying to stop.
The reason why the Scorched Creed is desperately searching for one is never actually specified. When it comes to Italka's cult, she states the veil of their influence was growing thin. And if a new Magus was not found soon, then the outside forces working against the cult would eventually not be able to be held back. If you're unfamiliar with Genestealer cults and how they work, the Magus is a psychically gifted individual that serves both as a revered leader figure for the cult and as a liaison, a diplomat and a politician for dealing with outsiders. These individuals look remarkably human and are blessed with both
Kind of funky
ludicrous
to
amounts of
think that
charisma and psychic abilities
there's
that
a
are
faction of
rivaled only by the
Tyranids
patriarch
that actually can
itself.
have a civilized
Moreover, so long
conversation
as
that
the
doesn't
cult has
involve
at
just
least one of
eating
them,
you.
They can pass down their genes to their children, ensuring that the cult has access to a Magus for generations to come.
Once again, why is there just a picture of a regular bunch of people from Essex here? I mean, they're some of the better looking people from Essex I've seen. But I thought this was a Warhammer video. God.
But the Spiral Dawn doesn't even have one right now, which puts them in a very dangerous position. At the beginning of the story, both of these cults suddenly become aware.
And in case
that
you're
a
wondering about the
Cypher has
joke,
finally been
Essex in
located
England
at the top of one
is
of the
the
world's many spires,
Essex is the
an
Alabama
incredibly
of
powerful
England.
individual
That's all
that
you need to know.
currently holds no allegiance to anyone but herself. Although Itala is revered by the cult, she's painfully aware that she's no Magus. She doesn't have any psychic abilities. She's growing old, and she's not going to be around to lead them much longer. They need to reach the Psyker before the Scorched Creed does, or they might not be able to hold off their attacks for much longer. This is something the Patriarch is also well aware of, so it presses her to lead a convoy out into the Waste in order to capture the Psyker alive. However, things
Isn't it
don't
kind of
go
funny as
according
well
to
how
plan,
a lot of
and
these
they end
stories
up getting
actually go
attacked
from
by
the
Scorched
perspective of
Creed.
other
In the
factions that
resulting
aren't just
road
human?
war, she ends up suffering a mortal injury.
Kind of
when a piece
emphasizes the
shrapnel
element of like
pierces her
no
chest.
one
Unwilling
faction
to
is
leave
the
Saint
good
behind, a
faction,
few
if
of
you
the
will.
cultists carry her the rest
Thing
of
is,
the way up the
like GW, for all their faults, they have learned to master how to sell a story. Because as humans, we always want to have a perspective that is relatable. And as humans, as us as people, we always want to take the side of, you know, the humans that we perceive as the good guys. So they have to strike a balance when they want to tell the story from like a different faction's perspective to still make it be like, but the humans aren't winning. I don't think I want to read that. The humans should always win. Like we have that certain bias towards it.
spire. The entire time this is going on, she's either unconscious or dead. We're not really sure, but we get to see inside of her mind.
Not like
She's
there's
in
a
a place she
distinction
doesn't
between the
recognize,
both.
and wherever
Dude,
she
when I
looks,
wake up in the
all she
morning,
can see is unending
she's either
darkness
sleeping
in
or
every
dead. We
direction.
can't quite tell.
This is when the memories of her previous matriarch, Canoness Aveline, interrogates her on why she betrayed her sisterhood. Now, in the early years after she opened the Abbey's gates to the Horde, guilt had been a constant companion.
I
But
have
with
guilt
the
too, but that's because I'm a
Patriarch's
VTuber.
influence that slowly lessened
Mandatory.
over time, as she believed she had not betrayed the sisterhood. In fact, she had liberated them. She had given them peace. She had always told herself this, but now, under the judgmental gaze of her former canoness, she once again feels the telltale sensation of doubt deep in her soul. The spirit of the canoness is not impressed by her answer, and thus the barrage of questions and accusations continue. She demands to know
You
why
failed the
she
Discord
allowed
terms of
corruption
service. You
into
will
her
now be
body and
banned.
soul, why she turned from the Emperor's light. Every venom-laced accusation causing her sanity to fracture more and more. In desperation, Itala tries to call out to the Patriarch for salvation, but its influence can't reach her here. Again, the canoness demands to know why she betrayed them. She frantically flails about in the darkness, desperately trying to get away from this place, but the canoness's questioning never stops. She tells Itala that each and every one of them is a crucible for their own becoming, and there was no way of escaping herself. She asks one
Something,
final
something,
time,
personal responsibility,
why
something,
did she
something, don't be a
betray
sheep.
them?
Smiley face.
Finally, her spirit broken, Itala confesses. She hadn't turned on them out of hope or hatred. It had been
The
something
power of the
far
cannon
simpler.
compels you.
She saw what happened
Confess!
to her fellow sisters as they became further entrenched in the
Ooh, that
sororitas'
power sword,
dogmatic
though.
creeds. How eventually they became thralls to tradition, unable to act of their own free will.
I'm sorry. Every time I see the, I love the Adeptus Sororitas and their design, but anytime I see a Sororitas with this bowl haircut, all I can think of is that stupid meme. It's like, hi, my name's John, I've got a bowl haircut, and I'm really happy with my bowl haircut.
Doubt had poisoned her, and in the moment when she betrayed them, she did it simply because she still could. Before her spirit slipped away into oblivion, the planet Shadow rushed in to fill the void in her body, bearing not salvation, but damnation. Now, at this exact moment in time, the Genestealer cult has made its way all the way to the top of the spire, but so too has the cult of the Scorched Creed. Even as they had felt the life force
That right
leaving
there,
her
by the way, puts into perspective how big some of these hive cities are. The fact that it takes years decades to overwhelm a hive city like that. Like, that, in some respects, that's shown really nicely in Darktide. The fact that even after, like, 3-ish years of the game being out, you've barely made a dent. Like, over 19 billion people live in hive cities minimum. So, you know, you've got all of that bullshit happening, and yet there could be a entire war happening on the lower parts of a hive city. But then people on the upper half are being like, oh yes, Mildred, it's an awfully lovely day today, isn't it? Yes. This corpse steak tastes delightful. Did you hear about the ruckus happening down on the lower levels? Oh, the rapscallions. I'm sure they're all having fun.
Body, they were unable to abandon their beloved matriarch. And
Yeah,
they brought
one
Italka
hive
with
city
them to see this
usually has
pilgrimage
the
through
population
to
of
the
about
end. Both
19,
sides
20
are
billion
currently locked in
minimum.
combat, a final bloody battle to claim
Hive
the
cities
cipher
are
as their
literally the
prize.
population of most
However,
planets.
That battle is suddenly interrupted when they all hear a blood-curdling scream coming from Italka's body. They
Oh.
turn back and see that she has undergone a horrific transformation. Chaos
Into an average VTuber!
warped her physical form into a demon that lunged at the cultist in a whirlwind of barbed claws. She was a winged, crimson-scaled monstrosity.
Yeah,
that
there you
rippled
go.
and flickered
Turned into a
as if she
VTuber.
was being
Cool.
burned with a ferocious internal fire. She was lightning fast, moving in jagged bursts that defied the eye, as if she was slipping and skipping between moments as she carved a bloody path through her former allies. In the end, everyone on both sides had been killed, with the exception of her son, Isaiah, who now must stand against the abomination his mother has become. And it's made immediately apparent
He has a superpower. Instantly to win this fight, all he has to do is ask for child support, and she would be smitten.
that he's no match for the demon.
Mother,
In the final moment,
thou
before
hast
she
not
can strike him
paid
down,
thy
however,
child
the
support.
psyker they've all been seeking emerges from her cave. One day, I'll get to add some dope-ass
Okay, neuron activated. Body horror, curvy as fuck, monster fucker license activated. That's peak design right there.
plague sisters to my Nurgle army. But what do you think of all this? Do you like the
I
idea
think
of corrupted sisters, or
That
would
we
you
have spent
rather
way
them
too
as
long
a-
thinking about something that's a
Do you
bit
think
more
we'll ever actually
irrelevant
get
than
a
what we thought it
Chaos
was.
Sisters battle army in the tabletop game? Do you think that sometime in the future they might become a prominent threat in the lore? Now,
I
let me know
think,
all of your thoughts.
judging from everything you've said, women bad. Everything you've said tells me that women bad. Can't have women. No women. No, can't have women. No, they'll cause mischief and what we have to come to realize is that the only appropriate way to respond to this, and that the only real way to come out of this with any like constructive learnedness, is that
The only way to go forwards is the orcs. That the way's the best, and we's gonna get muggered crumping. Screw them females, screw them humies. We gotta choose the right path from the boys.
or something. This has been a fun video. I hope you guys liked it. I know it's been a bit longer than normal. Please go again and watch the original. Go and give Wes Warhammer some love. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!